Earlier in 2025, Brown-Forman announced that one of its Scotch whiskey distilleries, Glenglassaugh, would be entering into a shared production model with its sister distillery, Benriach. This implies that the same team will be in charge of production at both distilleries, and it also means that Glenglassaugh, at least, will be implementing what are known as silent seasons, where they are essentially shutting down the distillery and no longer producing whiskey for a period of time. Now, Brown-Forman has insisted that this does not mean that Glenglassaugh is closing or even being mothballed, that it will continue to make whiskey. It's just taking a little bit of a break, although this one looks to be almost a year long. At least that is kind of what the rumors are at the time being. But this kind of sends some pretty significant shockwaves through the whiskey enthusiast community for two reasons. Number one, it's a sign of a continuing decline in the whiskey boom, at least. At least that's kind of how it's been framed by many. And it's also a bit of a shock, being that Glenglassaugh just recently revamped its core range with a 12-year-old, the Portsoy, and the Sandend, which I will be reviewing today. Hello everyone, welcome to Whiskey Uncorked. My name is Brian, and we are here with another whiskey review this week. And we will be talking about Glenglassaugh, and unfortunately, some of the shine has been taken off of this review, or at least some of the attention taken away from the bottle itself, because yes, as I mentioned, Glenglassaugh and Brown-Forman, its owners, will have decided that the global whiskey market is not conducive to them running 24/7 or at least 12 months out of the year, and they will be sharing a production schedule with Benriach. No word on whether Benriach, I don't think, I was looking around, didn't see anything about whether Benriach is also going to be doing silent seasons. I kind of figured not, because they are a little bit of a more well-known brand. I won't spend too much time talking about it now, but as I mentioned, Brown-Forman has announced, I think it was a 12% cut in overall workforce globally. That includes, the biggest chunk of that is from them selling a cooperage in Louisville, Kentucky. This, I think, was also after they sold a cooperage in Alabama. They've basically gotten out of the coopering business, which is sad for many, because it was a pretty unique aspect of Brown-Forman's operations, and from my understanding, was pretty popular in terms of its tours and things like that. But although some of Brown-Forman's bourbon brands have continued to grow, some have slowed down, and they did list other whiskey brands in one of their recent earnings reports. The other brands, not their major ones, and that included most, if not all, of their single malt brands had dropped in sales by approximately 22% in 2024, although that's not entirely limited to Scotch. But let's talk about this bottle first. Let's give this bottle a little bit of the respect it deserves, because this was really, checking YouTube, it looks like it's probably anywhere from basically the beginning of 2024, kind of maybe starting early 2024 up through a few months. This bottle was basically appearing on everyone's review channels, but I was able to get this for a solid price, kind of end of the year sale. This was down around I think it's normally like a $60 bottle in the US. I think I ended up getting this for maybe a little over $50. So ended up being a pretty solid deal. Figured it was a good enough excuse to finally grab one. And this was right before the news about the silent seasons being re-implemented at Glenglassaugh were essentially leaked. This bottle was part of the overall rebrand of the core range, with the lightly peated Portsoy and their 12-year-old, the relaunch of their 12-year-old, or their first 12-year-old, I can't remember. That one, they bottled at 45%, decided to chill filter it. Very strange, odd choices, which frankly is kind of apropos, or just very kind of, it's what Brown-Forman do. They seem to just look for ways to annoy the online, the whiskey enthusiast community, whatever. Whether it's the whole Glendronach chill filtration thing, whether they're actually changed anything, terrible PR response, inflated prices, Benriach just kind of being all over the place, at least in my opinion. And usually on the wrong side of good, or very rarely getting to great, at least in terms of that kind of their entry-level core range stuff. Although it's been a while now since I've tried a number of them. So at least that's kind of what I hear, is that it hasn't really improved much. If anything, it's maybe gotten worse. But maybe Glenglassaugh was, at least with the release of the Sandend and the Portsoy, which was a lightly peated version. This one, let's talk about this bottle real quick. Get that out of the way. This is 50.5% ABV. It is aged in bourbon, sherry, and manzanilla casks, and tends to drink kind of in the direction of a bourbon whiskey. It's not a big sherry bomb. You can see by the color there's a little tint maybe of pink in there. There's not too much about tasting notes on the bottle, but it just has waves of tropical sweetness with a crack of sea salt. Very, very accurate. That is pretty much exactly what this bottle is. Although, as you can see, let's say this. I've been sipping this one quite a bit. This one's probably a little lower level than it normally is by the time I'm doing a review. Beginning of this bottle, the first couple glasses out of here, I was blown away. Then it kind of dropped off a little bit, went a little bit more dry. I was kind of losing the tropical notes. Maybe it was more my palate. And then we're kind of where we're at today. So without further ado, why don't we get into the nosing and tasting notes, give this thing a score. All right, on the nose. So yeah, if this was a blind, I would probably think this was a bourbon matured whiskey. You get the fruity notes, the dry notes. It is more of a tropical, it's bright, it's fresh. There's a little bit of that kind of stereotypical grassy note, but generally we're looking at like stone fruit. I think I've kind of settled more like on pineapple. It was more stone fruit at the beginning. Yeah, it's actually, I think that's kind of the order of events. It was very juicy, very stone fruit, mango, sort of right up front. Then it kind of went a little grape fruity, and then maybe kind of the last couple drams out of here, it's been a little bit more towards like the pineapple and citrus. It seems like I'm getting a little more of the grapefruit today. Yeah, it's a little on the drier side, but it is pretty bright and fresh. Kind of has a crispness, a little bit of a bite even on the nose. Pick up some of that kind of salinity. Yeah, it's very kind of beach forward. There have been times where I don't know if it was the label or the name, but I could almost smell like hot sand on a Southern California beach or a tropical beach or something. Maybe a touch of coconut, sunscreen, and some, yeah, maybe not. I just got a big whiff of orange there. So maybe it is kind of bouncing still between that kind of grapefruit and then a little bit more sweeter citrus like oranges. Get your vanillas, all that great stuff. Not a particularly complex nose. It's young, it's non-age stated, but there is a pretty interesting combination of casks in here. You don't see manzanilla too often. The one cask I have, or the one bottle I have, it's been open for a while. It's a Balakin, and man, that thing at first was just like drinking tar. It was so dirty, so just. Kevin and I laugh about it all the time. It's kind of a famous bottle. I still have some. I keep forgetting about it. I like it way better than I used to when I first opened it. But so manzanilla cask, every time I see that, I kind of think of that one. And I have to remind myself that no, this probably isn't going to just taste like licking the street fresh after fresh asphalt was laid down. But this one, none of that. Very fresh, very warm, bright, fragrance. The 50.5%, I think, all around serves this whiskey pretty well. The nose is really nice, very summery. Let's see how it's tasting today. Cheers. Yeah, I really feel like there's been a few whiskeys like this over the last month or two, where like the front of the palate is so creamy, a little bit of fruit, you know, just like one of those cups that you get with, it's got like a cream or even like a yogurt. It's got the fruit cup with it that you pour into it. There's something really creamy, fruity, vanilla, that sort of thing. And then you swallow it, and it's just this salty bite that just like, it's such a transition. Some of the bottles have done it a little more smoothly, or at least it depends on what my palate was like that day, of course. But this one is certainly more of like that first sip especially is like, oh man, I thought this was going to be a nice, gentle, sweet, creamy experience all the way through, and you're just met with this big bite of salt, which is what they advertise us to be. It's right on the label, so it's not surprising, but it is a bit of a stark transition. Yeah, great silky mouthfeel. All along, today I'm getting more of the oranges. Yeah, fresh squeezed orange juice. Almost like biting into like a fresh orange. A little bit of the pith, right? Not so much grapefruity today, but yeah, still a little bit citrus pith. I think there are some peaches. There's still some peaches in there. This is definitely fresh fruit. We're not talking overripe. Tropical fruit, which is like my favorite Old Ben Nevis, stuff like that. This is definitely more on the very juicy, fresh fruit cocktail sort of thing. Finish is okay. Again, it's young. Don't expect anything wild. The cask influence overall is pretty light. You could put this, I think, in a... I haven't done like a lot of side-by-sides. I've been using my Ben Nevis 10 that I reviewed quite a while ago. I reviewed that earlier on the channel. It's been kind of my warm-up dram lately, has made its way onto my bottle kill shelf. So that's been kind of the precursor to this one pretty frequently. And there are some similarities with the younger Ben Nevis. This one's much more creamy. That one's a little bit more, at least especially now, grain forward, very spirity. This one's a little less spirity. This one is a little more rounded, much more soft, other than the salty bite. But you're not getting like any youthy, grain, shiny notes or anything like that. Finish is solid. Everything considered, the 50.5% serves it well. And I've really enjoyed this bottle up to this point. It hasn't quite hit the highs of those first couple pours. I hope it does, but it is one of those bottles. There have been a few over the years where that neck pour was just like stunning. Usually I think most of us, if we have a neck pour experience, whether it's the whiskey or our palate or whatever's happening there, that first one is usually it's worse than the rest of the bottle, or it gets better with time. But I have had a few where the first pour out of that bottle was the best experience, including one of my all-time favorite Springbanks, which still was Springbank 12 from like 2019 or something like that. The one with a little bit of burgundy in it. The first pour out of that was just like knocked me on the floor. It still ended up being one of my favorite bottles, but I never quite had that experience. But this one, it's not that big of a difference. Well, that one wasn't that big of a difference either, because it is still one of my favorite Springbank bottlings. But this one is pretty close. It's a good 10%. It's within 10-15% or so. But yeah, the first pour or two out of here was like, oh my goodness, what have I been missing? This is still really good. It's really enjoyable to drink. It's hard because when I pour a glass of this, it just disappears. It's just one of those where it's not super complex. The bite is enough to kind of keep the salty bite's kind of enough to keep your attention a little bit, but it's just good. And it just kind of goes down really fast, and I look over and the glass is empty already, which may have contributed to this one being a little bit lower than some of the other bottles by the time I review them. But yeah, super solid, really good. In terms of a score on this one, I've been given a few 6s lately. I think the whole package of this one is a little bit more enjoyable. Like, if I'm kind of go back to the Jura 16 that I gave a 6 out of 10, this is somewhat of a similar experience. That one's a little more spirity. Obviously, it's more age. You have to go watch that review. I talked about that one a lot. This one's a little bit fuller. This one's got a little bit more mouthfeel to it, at least kind of in my memory. I don't think I did a side-by-side. Maybe I did once. Doesn't matter. I think I'm going to give this one a 7. This is a very good whiskey, and I don't normally incorporate like value into my score, but if this can continue to be $60, it's pretty difficult to think of too many bottles that are going to compare with it. Just the ease of drinking this, the quality, just the satisfaction out of it for that price. But I think I'm going to wrap that up. I'm going to save all the industry stuff for another video, whether whiskey's coming to an end or not. It's really just a market correction, at least for the time being. We'll see if any other things come up that change my opinion on that. But yeah, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. Hit the sub button. And if you made it this far, I hope you can hit like. But until next week, everyone, thanks for watching. Cheers.